This is Bart Coppens and welcome to Biodiversity News. The monarch butterfly is going extinct. At least that's what you would think if you would follow the media. But is this really true? Before I'm able to comment on this, let's start with some of the facts that started this news. You see, the monarch butterfly is part of a beautiful natural phenomenon that happens every year in America. You see, the monarch butterfly can be found all over North America. But there's one catch. Most parts of their northernmost range are too cold for them to survive in winter. So what happens? Every year there is an annual migration from all the monarch butterflies in North America, and they all migrate towards one forest in Mexico. And this is where the species spends the winter, in this particular forest here in Mexico. Now, the monarch butterflies are really famous for this phenomenon. But recently, the numbers have started to decline, and some researchers found an over 90% decline of monarch butterflies overwintering in Mexico and migrating in North America. So that means there is definitely a large downtrend, and something is disturbing these populations on a large scale, to the point where the butterflies are reduced 90% in size, if we are talking about the number of individuals in the population. Is this good news? No, it is definitely not. It's bad news for these migrating monarch butterflies. But let me ask you one question. How can this migration in North America threaten a butterfly species that's also found in Australia? Wait, but it's also found in Cuba, New Zealand, North Africa, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, Indonesia, the Hawaiian Islands, and some of the Caribbean. So I'm going to ask you one critical question right now. And I want you to think about this, okay? Think with me for a second. So this butterfly is found in many parts of Asia, yes? Papua, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, the Philippines, everything I just mentioned. And these butterflies here are relatively common, right? So how can a 90% decline of this butterfly in North America threaten a species with extinction that has such a vast range? The answer is it can't. This is totally not related. The monarch butterfly, in fact, is one of the most common butterflies in all the other countries I just mentioned. That's right. The only thing that's declining is their migration from North America to Mexico. But in many other parts of the world, the monarch butterfly is still one of the most common butterflies, okay? For some reason, the media assumes that this population in North America represents the entire species. Is it good news that they are declining so much? No, not really. In fact, there is one thing that is threatened, and that is this natural phenomenon of migration. Because the migration is a spectacular thing to see, all these overwintering monarch butterflies together in the trees in Mexico. And if somehow this migration, if this migrating population went extinct, that will mean that yes, in most parts of North America, the butterfly will disappear. But that does not mean the species is going extinct, because there are other places than North America that we forget to consider. Wait, let me tell you one fact. There are even places in North America where the butterflies are found all year and where they do not migrate. One of these places is Florida. And it makes sense if you think about it, because Florida is warm enough for them. So there's no reason for them to migrate and overwinter in a warm place if they already have a subtropical climate. So is the monarch butterfly threatened with extinction? No, it's not by far. This is disinformation. Now look, I am concerned about this decline. It is bad news for our Earth. It is bad news for our biodiversity in North America. The monarch butterfly is a very beautiful butterfly that's famous throughout all of North America, and all of us are sad that it's declining. So I'm not refuting this. I'm just saying, be careful with using the word extinction, because this is not what's going on here. But the most important thing that you need to know is this. The monarch butterfly can basically be divided in two subspecies. First you have the Danos Plexippus megalippe, and the subspecies megalippe is believed to be the non-migratory subspecies of monarch butterfly. So this should be the populations found in Florida, Central America, perhaps even Australia and parts of Asia. These are the non-migratory resident monarch butterflies that do not migrate and have nothing to do with this decline. It's totally unrelated. And then you have the other subspecies, the Danos Plexippus plexippus, and this is the threatened population of butterflies, because the Danos Plexippus plexippus is the migratory form. The migratory form is separate from the non-migratory form. Now this makes sense if you think about it. Why is there one migratory subspecies and why is there one resident subspecies? Well, that has to do with genetics and climate. First of all, the Danos Plexippus plexippus, the migrating subspecies, is the one that migrates back and forth from North America to Mexico every year, over and over again. And this makes sense because their northern range is too cold for them to survive in winter. If they hibernate here, they would die. They would freeze to death. So that's why every year they migrate from Canada, North America, New York, and all the southernmost states. They all go to Mexico to overwinter and hibernate together in the same forests. And the second reason is genetics, but this has to do with the first reason. Because what's interesting is, as I said, there is one migrating and one non-migrating subspecies. Now the non-migrating subspecies, it doesn't even have this migration behavior, because it's also they're genetically programmed to do this migration every year. And let me tell you that even in North America, there are butterfly populations that don't migrate at all, such as Florida and some of the Caribbean monarchs. They stay put in the same place all year. Now this has also been tied to climate, because in this species, in these places, you do not have a cold winter, and in fact they don't even need to hibernate at all. So the whole migration thing, the whole hibernation thing is completely useless. So they never evolved this behavior. And this is a genetic thing, okay? But of course, the origin is this is the environment. Natural selection made it so that one subspecies is basically they have to think about migration all the time. They want to migrate. And the other subspecies, it has nothing to do with this migration. Nothing. Now, and let me tell you, the monarch that is actually threatened is only the subspecies that migrates, because most of the studies have been done on this overwintering migrating population by counting the overwintering butterflies in winter in these forests, by doing surveys counting the migrating butterflies. But these studies do not take into account all the monarchs in Australia, North America, the Caribbean, place where they do not migrate. And this is where the disinformation is. So is the decline sad? Yes, it's sad. But they're not going extinct. Last but not least, what is the reason for this decline? Now this is hard for me to comment on, but this is what I see. First of all, more research has to be done to pinpoint the actual cause of their decline. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, because we have not found the main scientific reason that they are declining so much. But I've worked with butterflies and moths all my life, and I think I have one idea. And that's the fact that if you consider how far these butterflies have to migrate every year. I mean, some of these butterflies, they migrate from Canada all the way to Mexico. And some of them don't even make this migration. They don't survive it in one generation. So what they do is along the way, they lay eggs as they spread to the south. And the second generations of eggs, the caterpillars, hatch into butterflies and they complete the second half of the migration to Mexico. So what you have in spring is the overwintering butterflies from Mexico. They wake up when it starts to get warm. They go north, start to reproduce, lay eggs on their food plant, and these other generations spread more northward. Now, this is part of the reason that they are declining. Because when you are considering that there's a big movement of several generations of butterflies going north and south every year, going to the northern or the southern part of their range, returning to hibernate or returning to North America when it's summer again. You will have to think that along the way they need pathways to support them. Now, if you think about this migration, it covers a very big surface area, okay? It's basically one very long journey. And if any part of this habitat that's along their migratory route is disturbed, what you do is you, sorry for the language, but you fuck with the entire process. Now, and I think this is what's happening, you know? Because if you want to migrate all the way from Mexico to Canada, you're going to need this very long route. And this whole patch of land, it has all the things you need. It has flowers, the butterflies need to drink nectar. It needs to have host plant. The butterflies need to lay eggs on their host plant, milkweed, Asclepias. And several things are threatening this. Agriculture is destroying parts of their habitat where they need to survive and reproduce. There is urbanization. This is taking away from their habitat again suitable places where their plants are growing. And I think some places along their migratory route are just very important locations, okay? Because it's basically a chain. And if any piece of the chain is broken, then the whole migratory process is basically reduced. That's what I think. And I don't think there is one concrete reason. I think there are many. First of all, butterflies are very dependent on their host plants to survive, okay? This is common sense. And it's a fact that there are less suitable places for them to lay eggs now. Because there's urbanization, forests are making place for cities and houses. Of course, you have the pesticide issue, you have the herbicide issue. Their food plant milkweed is basically considered a weed, a pest. So herbicides destroy their food plant, while pesticides used in agriculture destroy the insects themselves. Their habitat is taken away. Of course they need suitable nectar flowers along the route. And I think all of this is just declining. So what happens is this chain of areas, as they migrate from south to north, they visit this, you can imagine them taking an imaginary road. And if one part of the road is blocked, then the whole process is disturbed. And if even one American state is overdeveloped, and perhaps this is a place that's essential for them, then you are destroying the whole process. I mean, along the way these butterflies need food, they need nectaring flowers, so as of lately there are less nectar plants available as well for butterflies for the reason I just mentioned. And you can imagine if you had to trek through a forest, okay, you are a survivalist and you are going on a week-long journey through the mountains, and along the way when you are going through these mountains you're going to need to support yourself, find food. So what you do in the forest is you pick berries, you fish some salmon, you make sure that you are able to feed yourself along the way while you are migrating from point A to B. And if along the way any part of the forest is destroyed, so you cannot find any berries or salmon or food to survive, then basically your whole journey is going to be ruined, right? I mean, it's just only even if it's a very long migration through the mountains of 100 kilometers, all it needs is perhaps one of these places, one small area of forest to be destroyed, and you will not make the entire journey. And this is what's happening, in my opinion. Now, English is not my first language, so I have some trouble putting this into words. So I'm using these strange metaphors, but I really hope you can understand. Now, I'm not a professional, I'm not a scientist, I'm an amateur entomologist. But to me it is clear, because the reason is in Europe we also have many migratory moths and butterflies. For example, in the Netherlands you have the hummingbird hawk moth, Macroglossum stellatarum. And in some years they are really common, and some years you don't see any of them. Now why is this? Every year this moth migrates from Greece and the Mediterranean area, where it can survive in winter, to North America, to North Europe, sorry. And why does it do this? It migrates for the same reason that the monarch butterfly migrates. It's because in the southernmost range it's warm enough to survive the winter, but it's not in the UK, it's not in the Netherlands, it's not in Germany. If they overwinter here, they freeze to death and die, so every winter they go back to the Mediterranean, to Africa, and here they hibernate, and every spring they go back to north of Europe. And some years this moth is very common here, and some years it's absent. Now why is this? That's because their migration is very dependent on the weather, also on the wind. Many of these moths are carried by the wind from south to north, so if it's if the wind conditions are bad, the moths are blown in a different direction. If along the way there are forest fires or disturbances or overdevelopment, then they're not going to make it to the Netherlands at all. You don't see the species here at all this year. And that's because their migration was disturbed. And that's because migrations are very sensitive processes. If you want to get to A to B, it's not only important that point A and B are good, but everything along the way needs to accommodate you. You need a place to sleep, you need a place to find food, and if any along the road when any place is disturbed, you are not going to make your entire journey is going to fail. Now, this is the third time I'm explaining this, but I really hope that you understand this concept, because we can point out many things, many reasons that the monarch is declining. We can blame pesticides, we can blame overdevelopment, we can blame urban areas, we can blame the fact that people want perfect gardens and take away the weeds, and in fact the very forest where they are hibernating in Mexico is being deforested, so the only place where they can survive the winter is being destroyed. And it's not one of these reasons, it's the combination of all these things. All these things together is what is causing the big decline. And it is concerning and it is sad. But please don't say these butterflies are going extinct. Okay, their migration is threatened. But I will guarantee you the monarch butterfly will be here for a long while. Thanks for watching. This was Bart with Biodiversity News. Wow, so you're still watching after all this time? Perhaps that's the greatest news I've heard in a while. I would like to say thank you for watching this episode of Biodiversity News. Biodiversity News is my new YouTube mini-series where I comment and discuss on the latest updates news and research regarding biology, ecology and our planet as a whole. If you like this series, consider subscribing to our Patreon or crowdfunding platform, because you see, my YouTube channel is demonetized for some reason, so I rely on crowdfunding for 100% to run this channel. Last but not least, if you are one of my contributors, then you are able to vote on the next subject of this episode. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll be back with the next episode of Biodiversity News.